about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. Our distinguished guest today is John Philip Sousa IV, great-grandson of John Philip Sousa, best known for the musical anthem Stars and Stripes Forever. Mr. Sousa will discuss his endorsement of Dr. Ben Carson for president, which is outlined in his newly published book, Ben Carson, RX for America. In his book, Sousa argues that the future of the country, as the founders intended it, and the Republican Party's best and perhaps only chance of reclaiming the White House in 2016 is in the presidential candidate, Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson alone could smash the Democratic Party's monolithic lock on the black vote, without which Democrats simply cannot win the presidency. And welcome, John. Thank you so much for being on our program this morning.
Good morning. Delighted to be with you.
John, you wrote this book, and I was just curious, where was the impetus behind getting behind Dr. Carson? Did you write the book? Were you asked to write the book, or was this something that you were inspired to do yourself?
Well, the impetus came from 2013 when Dr. Carson spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast and stood 2 feet away from the president and told the president that political correctness was tearing apart free speech in our country, and that Obamacare was ruining our country, and redistribution of wealth was simply not the way to go. And we did more research on Dr. Carson. We started our super PAC, Run Ben Run, and raised an awful lot of money from an awful lot of people because they wanted change, a real change in this country. And once it became obvious that Dr. Carson was going to announce, I wrote the book to help promote his candidacy and to let the American people know what an incredible human being this guy is.
Right. Well, let me tell you where I stand. I think he's a remarkable individual. I love the guy. I really do. I've heard him speak. If there's character that can ever be evaluated remotely, it's easy to do with him, because he is so sincere when he speaks, and he speaks from the heart. You can't help but gravitate to him and want to support him. And in that regard, I'm on the same page with you. I later on in the program, I would like to discuss some of the issues that I think are pertinent and are critical to attract the younger voters or the disenfranchised voters, mostly who are the younger people. You know, the diehard Republicans and Democrats. They're gonna die being diehard Republicans and Democrats. You know, whatever. And but he does stand a chance. There are a few issues that I need clarification on, or I wish he would moderately change his position on, to be more consistent, again, from my perspective only, you know. And so why don't you tell me what is the basis for his entire campaign, and why should I vote for him?
Well, I think people who give a damn about America should vote for him, period, end of conversation. But the reasons are this: he is a true believer, a true Christian. We'll start with that. Number two, he absolutely believes in the Constitution of the United States of America and believes we should be governed by the Constitution of the United States of America. Dr. Carson believes in common sense. Dr. Carson believes in taking care of people, in healing America. And he's been healing people his entire life. And that's what he does. He solves problems. When you listen to other candidates, you hear a bunch of whining about issues. You don't hear solutions. When you listen to Dr. Carson, you hear solutions.
You know, it's interesting that we have right now a black president, and yet, in my opinion, the most attractive candidate for presidency is again a black president, but they're miles apart. They're totally different. We know nothing about Barack Obama other than what's been published and no one can verify. We know everything about Dr. Carson coming from the city of Detroit. Hey, I'm an East Harlem boy. I sang doo-wop back in the 50s. And I identify, when people say I'm from the inner city, believe it or not, I get chills because, I'm from the inner city of New York. I'm an East Harlem guy, And so I identify with that. And he took himself, and he made this decision when he was very young to say, I can either follow the whole crowd, or I can immerse myself in between the pages of books and learn and be something. And that's what he did. That's all it took, is for him to take the initiative to learn and to become aware of what is going on and to become educated. And he's basically a self-educated man when he was very, very young, because obviously the Detroit school system did not provide that for him. And he should be a role model for every inner city group of kids, not only in the United States, but the entire world. So I applaud him for that. And it's so interesting that we have this dichotomy between two men who one is in presidency, one running for the presidency, and they couldn't be further apart. Is my evaluation accurate, or am I off base?
No, you're right on. It's like comparing goldfish and gorillas, right? They are so different. But one thing about Dr. Carson's upbringing, his saintly mother is the one who got Ben to start reading books. She, I think, as you probably know, she cleaned houses for a living. She was at a very wealthy man's house cleaning his home. She was in the den. She saw that the television was covered by books. And when he walked into the room, she goes, "Mr. Smith, how do you watch your television? It's covered in books." And he goes, "Oh, I don't watch television. I read books." She went home that night and told her boys, 1 hour of TV a week, and we're going to start reading books. And of course, like young kids will do, they kicked and screamed and pouted and so on and so forth. But eventually Ben started reading books. And today Ben will tell you, when I was a kid, I could be anyone I wanted to be. I could go anywhere I wanted to go by reading books. That's what launched him.
It's a wonderful story and a total condemnation of our entire system and way of life and what our government has done to our inner cities. There's a direct connection between both of them, because nowhere have I ever seen the government saying, "No, we're not going to give you anything, but we already have given you the public library. Make use of them and make something of yourself. Case closed. Now on to something else." We never hear that, because there's no money in that. There's no votes in that. There's no graft and corruption in that. And I just applaud him so much, and I love listening to him speak. Now, his position on the budget is quite clear, isn't it? And why don't you tell us about what that is, because that's a tremendous interest to our audience.
Well, he makes no bones about it. He wants a balanced budget. He wants a much smaller government. And his proposal to get there, which makes all the sense in the world, is we don't simply fire 100,000 or 1 million government employees tomorrow morning. We, over a period of 5, 6, 7 years, let the government shrink by attrition. So when people retire, when people quit, when people get fired, we don't replace them unless, of course, they are critical to the function of the United States government, managed by the Constitution. Right. Not a bunch of unions or politicians saying, well, that clerk is vital, so we need to replace him, because if we don't, those other 3 people are going to have to work so much harder. Garbage. He wants a balanced budget, and he wants it again within 5, 6, 7 years. And if you look at the numbers of the turnover in government, it can certainly be accomplished through attrition. Now, at the same time, he believes that we have to rebuild our military, and we have to become the strength in the world that we were before Barack Obama took over.
Well, I don't think I understand that. We have a military that's massive. We spend about 1/2 of the entire world's military budget as our budget in military. We spend $500 million to build one airplane. We have 3 aircraft carriers, the Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carriers, massive weapons of mass destruction, if you will, which are all, unfortunately, from my perspective, all offensive weapons, not defensive weapons. My concern is this, is that I think we should have a very strong defense. Right now, we have a relatively weak defense. We have a monumental offense. The planes that we build, the aircraft carriers, the missiles, they basically are offensive weapons, not defensive weapons. And this is where most of our money is going. So if we rebuild we don't need to rebuild, we need to contract, because being defensive is a lot less expensive than being offensive.
Well, then, I mean, I don't want to speak here for Dr. Carson, but I would tell you, look at what the Chinese are doing, look at what the Russians are doing. And while I never like playing keeping up with the Joneses, if we want to remain the superpower in the world, we have to do both of those things. There's no question. We have to have a very strong defensive military, but we also need to have a very strong offensive military. If anyone believes that the Chinese, the Chinese are building up their offense and defensive forces because we're not. They want to become the superpower in the world, and that's very, very dangerous for the United States of America.
Well, you see, and this is where I would love for Dr. Carson to take the approach. And I only say this because I really love the guy. I mean, he's sincere. He's the only one that I can say that I identify with, and I would love to see him in office. I'm not saying this to be critical because I want him to lose. But I really would love to hear him take the position that a good defense is necessary for every nation, because we don't know what someone else is going to do. But making treaties, trade, individual trade, open borders with other countries is a way to foster prosperity and peace and harmony in the world. And by everyone building up their military and building up barriers, all you do is have an eventual war. And I think that is very dangerous. And I really wish the approach was more of not reconciliation, but get the government out of it altogether. If I want to trade with the Chinese or the Japanese or the Indians or the Brazilians, I should do so, and I foster a peace and prosperity for both nations, because we are on this exchange, this free exchange of ideas, of products, of services to one another. And of course, if we are helping each other and lifting the tide, basically, of both nations, that's how you avoid war altogether. Once you get governments involved, it's always one-upsmanship. You can't get away from it, and it always leads to the inevitable conclusion, conflict. And I think that's the wrong approach to go. What is your response to that?
Well, listen, I don't want to speak for Dr. Carson on this, because this is not an area that I think he has talked about. So I don't want to make up stuff.
Okay, fine. I understand that. Fair enough.
On his behalf, the only thing I would say personally is, Ronald Reagan's motto of peace through strength, and there's certainly something to be said for that.
Oh, I have no problem with that, because we can be defensively incredibly strong, but still foster trade and, in other words, the principle of free association with all peoples around the world. I think that combo cannot be beat and never, ever will ever lead to war. And if, again, I don't want to speak for Dr. Carson, but that may be two very separate subjects. The whole defensive thing and the whole trade thing. I'm sure Dr. Carson would agree in the freedom of trade and do you really want people trading with Iran today, who's a country who's committed to destroying the United States and destroying our pals in Israel and so on and so forth? So, at some point, you probably have to set some limitations, don't you? Well, see, here again, here's my point, and this is very important, because I think if Dr. Carson could rethink this and refocus it, he will capture the minds and the hearts of those people who are now disenfranchised and will not vote. Young people will not vote because they're tired of voting, or they've heard that concept of the voting for the lesser of two evils. They ain't going there. But you mentioned that Iran, the people in Iran love America. The only time they get,
yes,
they love them. They want to be more American than a survey was taken back in the 1990s. I believe it was by Buchanan, a Buchanan survey. And this is around the world. They took every country and they took a survey of which country wanted to be more like America than any other country in the world. And they force ranked them. Now, sure. At the time, the Ayatollah Khomeini was in Iran. We had no relationship with Iran. There was no conflict with Iran because we were isolated from them. And Iran became the number one country that wanted to be like the United States. But that's because we left them alone. And they saw what we had and they wanted it. And it's not that I hate Iran. I have friends in Iran. I have Iranian friends. They're wonderful people. I have no beef with Iran. The beef is that when the United States goes into another country, deposes a duly elected official, we install a dictator who brutalizes its people, then we establish military bases there. Guess what? You have conflict. This is our paradigm. This is what we've done over and over and over again. And in every Iraq, beautiful case. We're the ones that supplied Iraq with weapons of mass destruction to fight Iran. We're the guys on the block that fostered more war and more hatred among these people than any other country. So we can't say Iran hates us. Iran wants to be like us. The people want to be like us. Let's get the governments out. Let's let the people trade in free association, and we will have peace. It's a simple formula. It works every time.
I'm not sure how you get all the governments of the world to sit down and say, okay, we're going to butt out and let the people trade. I just, personally now, I'm not speaking for Dr. Carson,
right,
I don't know how that works.
Well, the point being is that it doesn't have to work, because we should not care. If one country wants to go to war with another country, it is none of our business whatsoever. We shouldn't be supporting either side. They have to... It's one of non-intervention. Now, if they decide to come over and attack us for some reason, then we have every reason in the world. But if Tanzania decides to attack Kenya, for example, I hate to see that, not my problem. I got enough problems. I don't need their problems. Our problem is that we go and intercede. And this is important, because this is for Dr. Ben Carson himself. I don't have him on the program. I'd love to have him on the program and tell him to his face. And I only say that because I admire the man. If I thought he was a waste, like if it was Joe Biden, I wouldn't be talking this way. You wouldn't be on the program, first of all. I'll be very honest with you. Yeah, I wouldn't waste my time. And the same thing with Ted Cruz and the rest of the Republican neocons. I do not waste my time with these nutcakes. But with Ben Carson, he's our hope. But if he's going to be our hope, he has to be consistent. We cannot intercede in other countries while being hellaciously in debt. We are over $1 quadrillion in debt right now. Our long-term debt right now, current and long-term debt, is more than the current debt of the entire world. I mean,
I understand.
Come on, guys. I mean, you better get yourself some part-time jobs to start paying this off, because I'm not. I'm too old for this. You're a young guy. You can do this. But you see my point, John.
Sure.
I think we need a rethink. We need a reset on all of this and saying, what does our Constitution say? Well, our Constitution talks about people. It doesn't talk about Americans. It says all men are created equal. All men are free. And we should act that way. We should not be intervening in any country to dictate to them how they should live or the way we think that they should live. If they want to kill each other, I hate to see that, but that's their business. It's not our business.
Well, I hope you get Dr. Carson on, because this is a really good and fascinating subject. It's a great debate as to where's to quote our illustrious president, where's the line in the sand? Is it our shores? Is it our ally shores? Is it where does that line get drawn? And I'm not sure that. Personally speaking, again, I'm not sure that's such a simple question.
Well, see, to me, it is simple. We've made it. We keep on saying this is such a monumental, complex problem that you need all these high officials with all of these embassies and negotiations and treaties. Look at the Trans-Pacific Pact that they're talking about. That's not free trade. That's restricting trade for a select few people who will make a fortune at our expense, your expense, and my expense. Hopefully more you than me, by the way. I'll be honest with you. But you know what I mean. And so we say, get rid of all of these. If I want to buy bolts and screws from Tanzania, from Brazil, from Chile, I should call, hello, Chile, you make bolts and screws. How much are they? What are they made of? Can you give me some lab tests to show the tensile strength? And if I say, hey, these are great bolts and screws, they good price in the whole bit, I like dealing with these people, I should buy it. I don't have to go. There's nothing in the Constitution that says before you buy something overseas, you have to go through the Department of fill in the blank. And there's several of them. And my point being is, I think Dr. Carson is playing with, in a sense, and I say this only because I really appreciate the man. I mean, I want to see him win, is because I think he's being lulled into getting sucked right into that system where I have to work within this system. This whole system, and we have all these rules and regulations. And I'm saying, no, that's the thing that's unconstitutional altogether, because he's a constitutionalist. And if he is, he better read it again, because I think he got a little rusty on it.
Well, I would, here I feel comfortable speaking for Dr. Carson. Dr. Carson does not believe in all the rules and regulations that we have. He does not believe in all the departments of fill-in-the-blank lines.
I agree. I agree. I agree with you there. I agree with you there.
And he wants to get rid of a whole bunch of that stuff because he knows it's impacting your life and my life and the life of every American, not to mention the small business owners that are responsible for 85% of all of our employees.
No, I understand. Oh, can you hold on, John? One second. We have someone on line one that wants to ask a question. I don't want to see him hang up. Did I still on line one? Yes. Hold on, John. Okay. Yes. Caller line one. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. Joe, this is Jim from Bixby. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Jim. Thank you for calling Liberty Talk Radio.
You're welcome. John, this question for you. I too, like Joe, am very enamored with Dr. Carson. I've only watched him in bits and pieces. I don't watch much TV myself. I've read a few articles, but I'm very impressed with the man. I actually like the fact that he doesn't have any political background or political baggage, and I'm very intrigued by his campaign. My question to you is, Has he established or stated his position on the failed war on drugs and the growing change of attitude in the nation towards medical and recreational marijuana?
Joe, thanks for the question, and that's a good question. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I know that Dr. Carson, having spent most of his career working as a pediatric neurosurgeon, has worked on many kids who have come into the hospital with drug overdoses, have bad brain damage, whatever. And just knowing who the man is, I'm sure he would like to try and find a way to prevent some of that. Whether he believes in the
Sure.
legalization of marijuana, I don't know. I haven't heard him talk about that subject yet. I'm sure he will. He's going to have to. It's too big an issue not to talk about. But I'm not trying to avoid your question, but at the end of the day, Dr. Carson really only cares about helping kids. I mean, that's his number one priority.
Great. Well, listen, I applaud you for getting behind this campaign and writing the book, and I wish you and Dr. Carson all the best during the upcoming months through the campaign. Thanks for taking my call.
You're very kind, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for calling.
You bet.
We have anything else on the line right now? No. Okay, we haven't. Okay. Now, folks, you can call in with your questions. Now we have toll free also, 855-866-1170. It's 855-866-1170. When you do call, remember to press the one button so we know that you want to ask a question and you're not listening in. There are several issues in which Dr. Carson takes what I would consider to be a standard, what they call neocon position. And John, between you and me, I think that's going to be his downfall, because he will be on stage with many other people who are neocons that have been disenfranchised more people than any other group, probably even more so than the Barack Obama group. And he needs to be very, very clear on these issues and why he is a different candidate than the others. Because if he takes the same approach, he's going to be homogenized in that neocon group, and the neocons right now are on the way out, especially with the young people. The young people, John, you may be old enough, but remember the Vietnam War, the peace symbol and the whole bit, and who was hitting the streets? It wasn't my grandmother. It was all the young kids hitting the street. They want it out. And now, although we don't have conscription, we do have people coming in, and we have 35 people a day, 35 people committing suicide because of the atrocities they had in their own mind committed overseas. That's like 9,000 people a year committing suicide because they served their country. There's something wrong with that. He needs to bring that home. He needs to talk about that, because that'll differentiate him between, where he stands and all the neocons that said, let's send some more boys and girls over there, and let's, if they die, it was for a worthy cause, which obviously it usually is not. Very rarely is it a worthy cause whatsoever. And I implore you, when you speak to him, to tell him that and say Joe Cristiano insisted that he do that. How about that, John?
Well, listen, Dr. Carson has stated so many times that our VA system is totally screwed up, and that one of his first priorities will be to clean up that mess that's been created. So putting two subjects in separate boxes, we've got a lot of vets that are having a very, very difficult time, and as you correctly stated, way too many suicides every day. One is too many.
Right, great.
If we can provide good care for our vets, which should be, quite frankly, America's top priority, then we reduce the number of suicides. We give these wonderful guys and gals the proper psychiatric and physical attention that they need to help them get back on their feet. We make damn sure that they've got jobs to go to, jobs that fit their background, their current status, their mental and physical capabilities. We need to do those things first and foremost to get that number of suicides down to zero.
Okay, I have a prescription for that. You want to hear the Joe Cristiano RX prescription for this?
Sure.
Okay, all right. If in fact we did not engage in conflicts overseas and intervene where we don't belong, it's like me coming to your house and saying, you should put the TV in that corner, and I move it for you. You throw me out. We should not. If we just stayed home, every single person in America, every man, woman, child, regardless of age, would in fact be defending their country, because they are living here and they are defending the country. They have the ability to buy and bear arms according to the Constitution. Of course, we have a small military. We should have a small military that would organize things, but no one would dare touch us. Look, no one touches Switzerland because everyone has a gun. No one touches that place because they know if they walk the streets, they're never going to see the corner. But if everyone would stay home, as my mother would say, if people would only stay home and mind their own business, the world would be a better place. My mother was an angel. She would be, I tell you, Dr. Ben Carson's right-hand man on the campaign trail. They'll do great. She should be vice president. But if people did stay home and mind their own business, we wouldn't need a VA. A VA is totally unnecessary. A VA is only necessary is when you force people, because they're serving their country. I love that set. Bring them overseas to support the bankers. They get maimed and everything. They come back, and then it costs us a fortune for the rest of their lives to keep them at least sane and keep them going. There should be no VA because there should be no intervention, and we should stay home. And everyone every man, woman, and child should be part of the military in one way, shape, or form. If someone attacks, we all pick up arms and we all go. And our small army we should have to coordinate things, and that would be it. We would save billions of dollars every year.
Well, shoulda, woulda, coulda. we do have troops overseas in harm's way. They are coming back, and they need proper care. So, in a perfect world, you win. I'm on your team.
Okay, great.
But it's not a perfect world, and so we do have kids coming back that need our help. So we either need to privatize the VA, get it out of the government's hands, so it's not run like Amtrak or the post office, and make damn sure that our number one priority is taking care of these kids. In a separate box, we can then talk about should we be sending people overseas. I agree.
And I'm not, yeah, and let me make myself clear. I'm not saying that those that have been duped into believing that they are defending their country by going overseas. And I mean duped, because they've been brainwashed to think that way in our stupid public school system, to bring them over there, and they think they're serving their country. They're serving the bankers, they're serving the military-industrial complex, they're serving Big Pharma. They're not serving anyone but those groups. They've been duped, they're there. When they come back, yes, we should spend our last dime on helping them get restored so they can be productive members of society. I'm with you. I'm just saying, let's stop the madness. We won't stop the madness. All we do is say, well, we got this resolved, but now we have something in Chechnya. Now we have something in Albania. Now we have something in Tanzania. We pick it. I mean, the second that we stop throwing bombs, we go, oh my God, we got to keep on making bombs. I'm not making any money. We have to we have to look for a conflict somewhere so we can throw some more bombs. In fact, leave with that. John, could you hold on? We need to stop for station identification. I'm getting all sorts of dirty looks from everyone in the studio. They're about to strangle me or send me overseas with an AK-47, okay? Hold on, we'll be right back. Anywhere. Thank you.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more. We'd like to thank attorney Constance Squires for her support of Liberty Talk Radio. If you want a comprehensive way to affordably avoid legal issues, call Constance Squires. For a free consultation, call 918-254-9283 or go online at isthyWillDone.com.
Steve Harden of the Harden Insurance Agency has over 30 years of experience designing family insurance protection, including retirement planning. Call 918-488-0024 or go to hardenagency.com and request a free in-depth estate and retirement evaluation. We look forward to earning your trust and helping you meet your life goals.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty. Liberty Talk Radio.
Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. With us is John Philip Sousa IV, and we're talking about the book that he wrote for supporting Dr. Ben Carson for president, Ben Carson, RX for America. And we're talking about the specific issues that are addressed in his book and that Ben Carson is addressing on the campaign trail. And in the interest of full disclosure, I love the guy. I think he's on the right track. We're just talking about some anomalies, some little changes that we need to make. We're fine-tuning his campaign as we speak. Right, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Now, the next subject, I know he believes in marriages between a man and a woman. All right. Now, so do I. My wife is a female, believe it or not. Okay.
Likewise.
She's an absolute angel and sweetheart. Of course, she'd have to be. She'd have to be angelic to put up with me. And I'm Italian and she's Irish, believe it or not, and we get along. This is miraculous.
It is. Where were you guys in World War II?
Yeah. Anyway, and so, you know, I fully understand that. Here's my problem. I'm not disagreeing with that at all, but when we say we are a free country, if a man wants to marry whatever, why isn't a person free to marry whomever they are? Why is it my business whether or not a guy marries the tree in his backyard, his dog, his whatever the case may be? Why is it my business if I am a free person and I have the right of free association as our Constitution outlines?
So Dr. Carson has said that gay people have the same rights as everyone else. They just don't have more rights than everyone else.
Agree.
Okay.
I thought he was against gay marriage altogether.
He believes it's up to the states, not the federal government.
Okay.
Number one. Number two is he truly believes, his personal belief is marriage is between a man and a woman. Period. End of conversation. But that gay people should have the same rights as everyone else, just not additional rights that sometimes are given to, quotes, minority groups.
Okay, I am in 100% agreement. I mean, obviously you get married to have children and to do those things, and the traditional marriage is between a man and a woman and all that. But there are cases where two women cohabitate. They consider themselves married, if you will, and they raise children, and the children are heterosexual. They grow up very normal. They get good grades in schools. They're productive people in society. And if it's a female, they marry a male. There's no correlation saying that if you're in a household with two females or two males that you're going to grow up to be wacko. There's no evidence to prove that. But I'm on the same page with him. I agree with that. So we'll let that sit. But I think if he talks about that, I think he needs to clarify it, because in reading what he wrote, I got the impression that he was just against gay people living together, because that's an important point, that you don't have to agree with it. I don't agree with a woman living with a woman, a man living with. I don't agree with that, but I don't deny them the right to do so.
Correct.
Okay, we're on the same page. All right, good. We finally agreed on something, John. It only took us 40 minutes.
Not bad.
I tell you, you're going to knock me out. After this, I'm going for a drink.
Where do I meet you?
It's on me, okay? Now, here's a subject that is incredibly sensitive, and most people at this point hang up, okay? All right, so I'm going to preface this by saying I am not anti-Christian, all right? I am not anti-religion. I'm not anti-anything. Here's my point. The American experience was to take in people of all forms of life, all walks of lives, all religions or non-religions and whatever. And Dr. Carson highlights, in my opinion, too often the fact that he is a Christian. I have Christian friends, I have Jewish friends, I have Muslim friends, I have atheist friends, I have more, and they're no different. And what concerns me is that his emphasis on Christianity and America being a Christian nation, which is a falsehood. I mean, most of the people here are Christians. If you took a survey of the number of people belonging to different religions, right, obviously the Christian religion would be number one, But we are a nation of all people, of all beliefs, including no beliefs. And my concern is that his emphasis on the Christian religion and on the Bible, which is only one religious book out of thousands out there, will alienate too many people. Thus, will reduce his chances of getting the nomination.
Disagree. And by the way, so would he. Dr. Carson is first and foremost a Christian man. When we formed the Draft Ben Carson Committee, and Dr. Carson heard about what we were doing, he said a few things. He said, number one...
What happened?
Oh, lost him.
If God wants me to run... Sorry about that.
Well, we just lost you for a second. I'm awfully sorry. John, excuse me, John, we lost you just for a second. You're back again. Okay, John, okay. Thank you.
So when Dr. Carson, when we began drafting Dr. Carson said a few things. He said, if God wants me to run, I will run. If the people clamor for me to run, I will run. And if we change the makeup in the U.S. Senate in November of 2014, I will consider running. So his first and foremost calling is to his religion, period. You're not going to change that. He is who and what he is. And by the way, I think with the incredible decline of morality in this country, the number of people going to church in decline, the blatant lying and corruption coming out of Washington, D.C. today, it wouldn't hurt us one iota to have a good Christian man in the White House. That doesn't mean everybody has to be a Christian. It doesn't mean you have to convert from Buddhism to Christianity. It simply means there is a Christian man in the White House.
Okay, I have no problem with that. But in my readings of him, of his campaign, it just, maybe I'm reading wrong. Maybe I'm not reading properly. It almost comes across as if we are a Christian nation. We are a nation that has a population mostly of Christians, but welcomes all faiths, including no faith whatsoever. I think that needs to come across. And I'm not saying that what he says about religion and his quotations from the Bible are incorrect or immoral or unethical. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that he doesn't want to cast himself as saying, boy, if you're not a Christian, get out of town, get out of Dodge, Charlie. And it almost borders that, and that's my concern. I'm saying that for him, not against him. Understand that.
Yeah, and I would simply say you can't change the color of his skin any more than you can change or alter his very strong Christian beliefs. That is who the man is. And here's what I would say about his talking about his religion or Christianity too much. This is a man who's not very well known, but in the national polls, he's 1 and 2 in every single one.
Right.
So people are responding to his message and responding favorably and positively. So I hear what you're saying. It ain't gonna change. He is, he's a black guy with a very strong religious belief. And he's not ashamed or embarrassed to state it.
Yeah, no, and again, I don't want to put. Hey, I used to be an altar boy, a terrible altar boy, but I was an altar boy. They asked me to leave once, but I won't get into that. But you see where I'm coming from. I'm not saying I don't want him to change, but I want him to change the inflection that is received from people as if. This is a biblical nation, because when I hear that, I hear, well, we have a biblical nation, a Christian nation here, and we have an Islamic nation here, and forever we'll be at war. I want to get away from that. I want to say, if you want to be an ardent Christian and go to church every single day, and want to be a Catholic and go to novena every Wednesday morning, that's fine. I'm not denying that at all. I'm just saying, don't make that the American culture, because the American culture is be whomever you want to be. You want to go to church every day? Fine. If you don't want to go to church at all, fine. That's your decision. And I don't want to change him. I want him to change the rhetoric so that it doesn't appear as if I vote for him, I better be a Christian, or really I don't count. That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, and I don't think that's his message at all. It's certainly not the message in my book. It's not the message in any of his books. I'm sorry, I don't know what my dog's barking at.
I have 3 dogs. It's okay. It happens all the time.
Thank you. Hope it's not bothering your listeners.
No, it's okay.
He ignored me. Sorry. He's not going to change his message on this.
Okay.
It's who he is, and the people are really responding.
Yeah. Well, see, young people, fewer young people. I mean, if you go to any church, and if they have a special service, typically, you'll find older people there. And maybe older people are there because they say, well, I don't have that many more years, I better be right with God, because when I die, I want to go to heaven, Maybe people think that way. But really, young people today want to have a sense, a religious experience, but they don't want to be restricted to what they perceive to be archaic messages that they don't relate to. And I want him to attract the young people, say, whatever religion is, it's fine, this is what I believe, and it's okay to quote scriptures, because in scriptures there's always a good message, and regardless of what scripture it is. It can be any scripture whatsoever. It can be from the Quran. There are very good scripture in there that you can take part of certain statements in there that apply universally, and I have no problem with that. Although if I was running, I wouldn't do that. I would steer away from that. But if he wants to, that's fine. But I just wanted to make my point on that, is that we need to get young people in here who are looking for true freedom of association without being boxed in the old hierarchy. And understand my point, where I'm coming from. I want to push in that regard, and I'm only wasting my breath only because I value the man very much.
Well, and I know he appreciates it, and again, not to be redundant, but this one you are wasting your breath on, because he will stick to his guns on this one.
Okay, John, this won't be the first time that I wasted my breath. This will be like the 4 millionth time. All right, now, here's a big one. Are you ready for the big one? Hold on to your, get yourself braced in the chair. Hold on to the desk. All right, securing the borders. I do not understand that.
What don't you understand?
Our borders comprises of something almost 15,000 miles. How do you secure them?
Well, first of all, the southern border is the real problem today in terms of what illegal immigrants are costing the American taxpayers in terms of crime in our country. Now, it doesn't mean that if you secure, seal, fence, use whatever word you want, the southern borders, that somehow that guy's people won't come across the northern border. That then presents a new set of problems. Canada does a much better job at making sure people don't get across the border than Mexico does. Mexico actually encourages people. And by the way, folks that really want to harm Americans and harm America know that the easiest way to get into our country is to slip across our southern border. It is. I did a series of TV ads for Joe Arpaio a number of years ago, and I went down to the border. Was right there in the middle of the summer, sweating my you-know-what off.
Well, I may ask, where on the border? Where were you?
South of Tucson.
Okay.
Sierra Vista area. Okay. And I could raise one leg over what our president calls a secure border, moved the other leg, and I was in Mexico.
Correct.
And I reversed the process, and I was back in the United States.
Right.
And not a green border guard to be seen.
Agree.
And if I were a terrorist, could easily get across the border. And so when we talk about securing the border, I think there's all kinds of ways to do it. There is incredible technology we can use. There is the old-fashioned way, like Israel does, of building really good fences, walls, whatever you want to call them, to keep the bad guys. And when I say bad guys, I'm talking about people who do not belong in the United States legally.
Well, John, people who are bent on doing harm to the United States are not going to walk from Guatemala through Mexico to the United States to work. I mean, they're not going to do that. We have had open borders for decades and never had a problem. The big problem that we have with our borders today is that the United States is in fact financing the drug lords in Mexico who are running the small towns, who are pushing these people to come to the United States to work because there is nothing there other than pushing drugs, and they're coming here. But these people want to come here to work. We have well, take the town of Detroit where Dr. Carson comes from.
Here legally.
Wait a minute, hold on. Legally, open borders has a place because there are young men in Detroit where Dr. Carson comes from. They can just as easily come down to Texas and Southern California and work the farms and have a job. But yet we have people from Guatemala coming all the way up through Mexico to the United States to work on the farms, while the young men in Detroit are saying there are no jobs. You see my point. My point being is that if I was a terrorist and I wanted to inflict tremendous harm on the United States, man, there's 15,000 miles. I can take a boat and float it out to go into the Gulf of Mexico, and the water is very shallow. I can literally walk onto a beach. There would be no one there. You could never secure the borders. You couldn't secure the borders around the Florida. You couldn't secure the borders around the East Coast, the West Coast, or even Canada. There is no border guard. You can walk from Manitoba through the United States. No, not even the deer would know you were doing it. So this is a false sense of security, having all of these borders just to keep people out. If we got rid of the war on drugs, which I'm going to ask you about in a second, and we opened our borders, there would be, again, free association. It wouldn't cost us anything. Drug trade, of course, would cease to exist because there'd be no money in it. And we would have people coming in here who are young, having plenty of kids, but again, they would be subject to the laws of the United States. What's your answer to that?
Well, several things, and because I'm old, I'm not sure I'll remember everything you just asked. But if people want to come to the United States to work, there are legal ways to do that. Now, I would be the first to tell you that I think the legal ways are today the wrong way. I think our laws, our immigration laws, are totally screwed up. And by the way, so does Dr. Carson.
Okay.
So Dr. Carson believes that if you were in, let's just take with the current, whatever the number is, 13, 17 million people who are here illegally, if you want to work in the United States, then secure a position, go back to where you came from, apply for a work permit. We'll get you the work permit very, very quickly. You come back across the border legally and go to your job.
All right, there's no problem with that. I mean, if we need government paperwork, okay, I'll concede to the government paperwork. But if someone wants if we need someone to pick lettuce, and a person wants to pick lettuce, have them come to the border crossing. They sign their name, they get fingerprinted, whatever they do. All right. I mean, I think that's unnecessary, but I'll concede to that, and they come to work, no problem, because the person who wants to do harm is not going to go through a border crossing. They're going to be sneaking in ways that they know, because they've studied this, know they can never get detected, and they want to blow up a building, they'll blow up a building and will never, ever, ever know it, and spend billions of dollars every year securing an area that they'll never use.
Okay, so again, this is one of those subjects where I think we've got a couple of boxes.
Right.
First are the folks who want to work in this country, and I agree with you. The guy up in Detroit does not want to go to Oxnard, California, and pick strawberries.
Correct.
I got it.
Right. But he's on welfare. But you and I are paying for him not to work, right? While you and I are paying millions of dollars for border patrol, keeping the people who want to pick the lettuce or the strawberries, we're paying billions of dollars to keep them out. So you and I are being zapped from the left and the right.
But that second piece can be fixed very easily.
And the first part can be fixed too by doing away with all of the.
Again,
if a person
you've
comes
just
in,
added another box. You've added another box,
right?
And that's okay, because. I feel like I'm ducking arrows here.
Don't hate me forever, just for 15 minutes, okay?
And listen, talking about the kid up in Detroit, Dr. Carson is all for providing a net for people. But Dr. Carson, more than any other person in the United States I've ever heard talk about self-reliance.
Right.
You need to take responsibility for your own life. It's not the taxpayer's responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. It's not your next door neighbor's responsibility unless they voluntarily want to help you.
Right, and I agree. If a person volunteers, if I want to give to my neighbor, I can give to my neighbor. If I like not to, I like not to.
Doing.
Right.
So Dr. Carson wants to provide the tools. I mean, this is not unlike what Gingrich and Clinton put together years ago that's been dismantled by Obama. And that is, we'll help you for a period certain. If you need clothes to go on an interview, if you need some training, whatever you need to become self-reliant to get off the dole, we will help you with. But you have a finite number of days, weeks, months, or years to make it happen. And then, sorry, the drawer to the safe deposit box is closed.
All right, I suggest that you tell Dr. Carson that the public sector can do it a hell of a lot better, temporarily, better than the government can ever do it at no cost to the taxpayer. And with that, I want to give you the next 30 seconds is all yours. Okay, John? I'm an easy guy to get along with. What the heck?
Wow, that much, huh? All right, so going back to the border. Education, healthcare, natural resources is costing this country billions, if not trillions, to support the illegals that come across the border.
Correct.
And that's not fair. No different than I move into your home, right, and say, feed me, take care of me, provide water, provide food.
Correct.
How do I get the right to demand that of you?
Exactly.
Well, that's what's happening with these illegals. So we've got to stop that.
Well, it's not the illegals, it's the government. We got to get rid of the government, John.
Okay. We've got to
as we know it, I should say. You know.
Yeah, we've got to get rid of the policies that allow this. There's something on the books, and I'm forgetting the name of it now, but certify, verify. So anyone that goes to work for any company is supposed to run your information through this I-Verify, E-Verify, whatever it is, right? To see if I can hire you. And if it says, it comes up with a red thing, I can't hire you. Well, if companies would use that, then less jobs would be out there. And if a company violated that, I say fine them $10,000 or $100,000 for every illegal that they hire. And if you really impose that, then problem goes away pretty quickly.
See, John, I really wish we'd go back to basics. The Constitution said, people are free. They have their natural right to be free. I don't think anyone who comes from Mexico and walks across this imaginary border, as you have, as I have, by the way, and steps over the border, all of a sudden becomes an illegal person. What becomes illegal is the actions of government providing support for these people by taking the money out of our pockets. With that, John, we have about 30 seconds. I want to give the last 30 seconds to you to promote the book and to promote Dr. Carson. I want to thank you so much for being a wonderful guest, and thank you for taking all my abuse. You are a good man, Charlie Brown.
Hey, listen, this was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Our website is 2016committee.org. That's The Super PACs committee, Dr. Carson's committee is carsonamerica.com. Go to either one. My book, which is a good, quick read, about 200 pages, will tell you almost everything you need to know about the wonderful human.
Oh, what happened? Hello? Did we lose you, John?
I'm sorry. Every time my cell phone rings, this thing cuts out.
Oh, I see. Okay, get John. You're back on.
Go to either Amazon, RX for America. Got it there? Oh, perfect.
Yeah, here it is.
And that's it.
That's it.
And get the book. Dr. Carson is really a person everyone should look at as a possible president in 2016.
All right, I want you to do me a favor. Tell Dr. Carson lie to him. Tell him I'm a hell of a nice guy. Okay? Thank you so much for being our guest. Appreciate it so much. I hope maybe we can see you later on, when the campaign heats up, and maybe we can have you back and see how things are going.
I'd love to do it.
Thank you so much, John, for being our guest. Appreciate it very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support. We'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, but let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. As my wife would say, folks, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. One takes a lot of effort. One, you don't have to do anything at all. Unfortunately, folks, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well, stay tuned.